This is the story of a young woman named Ingrid Neopolos and her parasitic partner Niels. Join these two in their mystery-filled journey as they discover the truth about the world around them. Will human, Engrisian, and parasitic kind be forced into ruin? There's only one way to find out. A young woman bearing lovely pink hair and a light pink short skirt could be seen in a fairly empty night diner eating a rather large deep dish apple pie covered in whipped cream. On her left side in a waist holster could be seen an umbrella connected to her arm with a strange umbilical cord that was well hidden. Slowly, the woman picked up a silver serrated knife to cut herself a fairly large slice of the steaming apple pie. She lifted it slowly and placed it on a well-decorated plate in front of her. The pie oozed with a golden substance that had traces of cinnamon. Slowly, the whipped cream that dressed the pie in a simply seductive way began to liquefy before her eyes. It captivated her. She bit her lip lustfully and continued to watch it closely. Slowly, it soaked into the pie's crust, covering it with even more sweetness and filling it with another level of flavor. The young woman blushed at its sight. She squirmed, placing her hand between her thighs and moaning faintly at it. She lustfully smiled at the slice of pie in front of her and trembled with a sensation so blissful that it could only be described as heavenly. Her umbrella suddenly pulsated with the pink lights. Yes, I know, Niels. Just let me enjoy this. I want to examine this delectable dessert just a bit more. It did just come out of the oven after all. I want all those lovely juices of the apples and various other ingredients to soak more into the pie's crust. Yes, that's it, just a bit longer. I want this pie to reach its climax before I begin to poke at it with the tip of my fork. If it can just do that for me, then I might reach that exquisite feeling granted only to women in heat. But knowing me, I can't keep this ecstasy going for much longer. I'm dying to get a taste. I want to feel all its warmth and tantalizing juices in my mouth. The way it feels on my tongue and the way it tastes when it's being chewed by me is simply indescribable. She stated lustfully in heat. She immediately grabbed her fork and cut the slice at an angle, removing only its tip. She slowly stabbed the tip and dragged it across the plate through the liquefied whipped cream that was now fused with the pie's golden goodness. She slowly lifted her fork and watched as the whipped cream lightly dripped back onto the plate. Without a moment's hesitation, she licked the pie's tip gently and shivered with a lustful blush. She quickly took the pie into her mouth and filled the fairly empty night diner with a loud moan. A few minutes later, she could be seen halfway done with the entire dessert and speaking to her umbrella. Niels, do you remember the first time we met? Of course you do. That was the day our lives intertwined. And a few weeks later was when we first met John. Now that I'm thinking about the past, it felt like it was just yesterday, when in actuality it was 5 years ago. I don't know what events led up to John coming to Driftwater and encountering me in the first place. Well, actually, it's completely possible that Catherine was involved in that. What a sneaky Engrisian she is, I said, taking another bite of delicious pie. The umbrella located on her waist holster began to wobble, and the umbilical cord connecting the two faintly glowed with a light pink energy. Niels, care to remind me of how the two of us first met? I asked calmly. As she did, Niels, her Omega Site partner, could be heard telepathically speaking to her. Its voice was dark, yet calm. Yes, your blood and aura tasted unlike anything I've ever had. I quickly grew a taste for it. I wanted as much as I could get, but I quickly realized that if I continued to drink from you, that you would have died from blood loss. Doing so would have resulted in my demise as well. I stopped and returned a bit of blood to you. But by the time I did, you were already unconscious and on the ground, it said. Ingrid shivered in joy from savoring the taste of her pie before she spoke. Then at some point in time, someone found me, and I was rushed to Driftwood Research Center. I would have been sent to a hospital, no thanks to the Omega site that was now attached to my left arm. Neil posed in slight amusement and stated that Ingrid needed him. Ingrid agreed in laughter. Anyways, then enter my good-for-nothing family, she stated, playing with her next slice of pie. I was dazed, but still capable of hearing the conversation the researchers were having with my parents from over the phone. It was thanks to you and the advantages that you gave my body, Niels. Enhanced hearing, vision, endurance, and a myriad of other advantages. I imagine the researchers got my home contact information from the list of emergency contacts I kept in my wallet. Regardless, my father answered, and at first it seemed like he was concerned about my well-being. Then the researchers told him that the police had found me in an alleyway unconscious with an umbrella-like parasite attached to me. I heard my mother gasp in the background of the call. My father didn't, though. It didn't surprise me much. He barely seemed to care much for my well-being as it was. The researchers told him that the chances of me surviving my parasitic encounter were little to none. I couldn't tell if he was lying or not. Regardless, it bothered me that I didn't know more about the situation I was in. A lack of knowledge is something that's simply inexcusable for me. I must know all I can, through whatever means necessary. That's what John taught me, and that's just one of my pillars for becoming a great detective like him. Anyway, my father sighed loudly and told the researchers to do what they could to help people understand how parasites worked. He basically told them to use me as a research project. That infuriated me. He would sacrifice me without hesitation just to learn more about something unknown to people? I was his daughter, his own flesh and blood, and he'd get rid of me without a second thought. I turned my head in anger and sorrow to face the opposite direction. I tried to climb out of the bed I was on, but found that I was strapped to it tightly. I looked around and noticed that you were placed on ice next to me and tied down as well. Our umbilical cord wasn't harmed, and a constant flow of blood remained transferring between the both of us. I began to panic and cry. I squirmed fruitlessly and begged for someone to free me. It was then that a blonde-haired woman, wearing black glasses lined with gold, and what looked like a three-piece women's black casual suit lined with gold material, with a long single ponytail hanging behind her head, approached my bedside. She bore a stern face that instantly instilled fear within me. It was then that I got a strange sensation that she wasn't human. She felt like Niels, but she wasn't. She was a lot stronger. She was what was known as an alpha-site. It was then that Niels' single eye violently opened in response to her touching him. He stared at her with murderous intent. She simply smirked at him and adjusted her glasses quickly. She was swiftly handed a clipboard by the researcher that had spoken to my father over the phone. "Do we have permission to admit her into the facility?" she asked calmly. The researchers answered with little delay. "Yes, Vice President. The father was even kind enough to provide us with all the medical records as well," he stated. The woman smirked, and a sinking fear immediately invaded my being. As the woman handed the clipboard back to the researcher, she grabbed a needle filled with an unfamiliar sedative. She stroked my head gently and drew closer to me. Meanwhile, Niels tried violently to break free of his bindings, but was ultimately too cold to warp his form and do anything that would help us escape. Additionally, they had injected me with something beforehand that suppressed my aura. The woman slowly covered my mouth and brought the needle close to my neck. Humans, Engrisians, and parasites are all scourges on this beautiful world. None of you deserve to have ever existed. It would be so easy for all of you to simply disappear. Unfortunately, doing so takes too much time and causes far too many complications. However, with your father's wonderful donation of you, we will complete what we need to eradicate all of you in a way that's sound and reasonable. Now, rest, Ingrid. We have lots of tests to run," she stated, injecting the sedative into my body, causing me to fall unconscious. Week after week, they subjected us to countless painful tests. Some forced my mythical ability to become unstable, while others caused you to go on a rampage. Ultimately, the tests were beneficial in making us stronger, but the pain we endured was far too much. It broke us. It broke me. In the instant it did, you didn't hesitate to kill the people experimenting with us at the time. I'll never forget the way you slaughtered them. You didn't hesitate, Niels. That's when I learned that I shouldn't consider you as anything else but a parasite, a monster that only wishes to prolong its survival by keeping me, its host, alive. As time progressed into what felt like endless days, I found myself wanting so desperately to escape that hell. I knew that if I did escape that place, that there would be nowhere for me to go. I grew hopeless and simply wished that one day their experiments would kill me, just like it did so many of the others there. That all suddenly changed one night, when a glimmer of hope filled my being. It happened right before someone was supposed to come in and inject us with another round of sedative. A sudden explosion was heard that rumbled the building. I quickly climbed out of bed and rushed towards the windowless door to investigate. Its lock suddenly disabled and opened slowly. Then, an unfamiliar voice from over the intercom told us to run away as far as possible. Slowly, I became filled with hope that I'd be free from this hell I was living in. I rushed out of the room barefoot in nothing but hospital clothes and Neos, who was still attached and unconscious to my wrist. Together, we joined many of the other captives attempting to flee. But as we rushed down the hallway towards the stairs, that same woman with that sharp outfit emerged and halted us with her presence alone. That's quite enough. You things never cease to amaze me. At even the smallest hint of freedom, you all try to escape thinking that you're safe. You are all fools. Unfortunately, though, all but one of you are completely useless to our plans now, she stated idly, raising her hand to the air. We watched in fearful anticipation, but mere seconds before she suddenly lowered her hand, Niels woke up and covered me in his fleshy umbrella-like body. Seconds later, I heard a horrible sound. It sounded like bodies dropping lifeless to the ground. I grew scared and screamed at the top of my lungs in tears. Niels quickly calmed me by balancing the glutamine in my system, though. I stood as he lowered his fleshy shield and returned to his resting state. Slowly, I looked around and noticed that all the people fleeing with me were completely cut through. There were large amounts of blood and disembodied organs on the floor. Some were human, and some were Engrisian. Their blood merged and warmed my feet. If it hadn't been from Neos keeping me calm, I probably would have passed out from shock. Slowly, the woman began to approach us. Ingrid Neopolos, you by far outstrip any of them. Your mythic ability and even your parasite are extremely rare, and with being rare comes valuable information. You are capable of creating illusions so powerful that even reality can become distorted and bent to your will. You truly are the equivalent of the Norse god known as Loki. On the other hand, your parasite is capable of absorbing the aura of other people it devours, allowing for a fascinating transformation, which is completely unbelievable to those who have not seen it, she stated calmly. Suddenly, she grabbed me by the chin and soon continued. I think it's time my master met the resource responsible for our product's accelerated development. As she released my chin, she was suddenly shot dead in the forehead from a bullet that came from directly behind me. I suddenly turned and noticed a man in a long gray trench coat approach me from behind. He seemed to have a parasite attached to his left arm as well, but his parasite took the form of a cane. Young lady, we don't have much time before that monster regenerates. Let's get you out of here, he stated, picking me up out of the blood and carrying me past the woman down the stairs. Meanwhile, back on the previous floor, the woman could be seen standing. The bullet in her head was forced out as if it were nothing. That's human again. He's starting to become quite the problem, she proclaimed, standing while being approached by researchers telling her that the building was a loss. She simply turned her back towards them, and within a matter of seconds, they fell apart, just like mincemeat. I agree, she stated, heading towards the elevator. Meanwhile, me and the man could be seen closing in on the first floor. Sir, who are you? I asked. With him being mainly focused on running away, he still answered my question. My name is John, and I'm a private detective. Don't be alarmed, but I already know much about you, Ingrid Neopolos. My eyes widened in shock to this. I don't understand what makes me so special to them. Sure, that lady said I was rare and that I had a few things going for myself, but what does that even mean? What did she want with me? I asked in desperation. He quickly turned the final corner and exited the stairwell on the ground floor with me in his arms. I promise to tell you everything once we're safely away from this place, he stated, suddenly halting to the sound of an elevator opening up just ahead of us. Slowly, he put me down and stepped in front of me. He quickly called out what I believe was his parasite's name. In that instant, his cane gruesomely changed into a flaming longsword. Its blade looked sharp and hardened like blood bone that ignited from simply being waved through the air. Suddenly, a mouth appeared on its guard. John, it's unlikely we'll survive an encounter with her, not unless we join forces with them, it stated in a dark voice. It quickly stretched gruesomely backwards towards me and continued. Ingrid Neopolos, make no mistake, this is a life or death situation. We already know of the immense power you have from the records we stole. I suggest you use that power to help us fight and ultimately survive. I hesitated in increased fear and spoke hesitantly. But I don't even know how to use my abilities. And more importantly, there's no way I can defeat a monster like that. Did you see what she did to those people upstairs? Taking her on is insane. I shouted in clear denial and fear. It was then that Niels awakened and once again balanced my hormones to keep me calm. Ingrid, neither of us want to die. Let's help them, then go on to live a free life of this place and the things that they put us through, Niels stated. His voice was like a consciousness. I listened to him and embraced his words. My mind was clear and free of fear because of him. Slowly, I stood to my bare feet and stood beside John and his parasite. I quickly took a deep breath. Niels, whatever you're doing to suppress my fear, keep it up. We're going to get revenge for ourselves and the people she tormented. I shouted, pointing Niels towards the woman stepping out of the elevator. John stood by in absolute shock to my sudden mood change. The woman gazed at us for a few moments and smirked. Now this is truly interesting. Just a few moments ago, your aura was radiating with fear and despair, and now you're suddenly fine and filled with spite. That is truly unusual. Your records didn't show any signs of bipolar syndrome, so the only logical reason for this happening to you right now is your parasite. Come, Ingrid, it's time to test you, she stated. While she spoke, a strange spear-like blood blown emerged from her hand. She quickly twirled it and dashed towards us with inhuman speeds. John quickly leaped in front of Ingrid and deflected the woman's attack head-on to create an opening for Ingrid and Niels. Meanwhile, Ingrid slid underneath her and used Niels to bind her by the neck. They pulled her backwards off John, allowing for him to stab the woman through the heart with his blazing blade. She coughed up blood, but still wasn't going down. Suddenly, the umbilical cord connecting Niels and Ingrid glowed with a red light. Immediately following, Niels gained immense muscle mass and completely slammed the woman through the floor and into the basement. John whistled in surprise of Niels' strength, but quickly grabbed Ingrid to flee. Admittedly, I had my doubts about running from that battle, but John quickly reminded me that that woman we were facing wasn't human, and that the chances of us actually killing her were low. He somehow knew she wouldn't pursue us if we could just make it outside. When I asked him why, he simply said, "Just trust me on this." But he did mention that she killed even the staff that worked there. Within a few moments, we made it just outside the building and found ourselves surrounded by police with their guns pointed at us. We were ordered to raise our hands and not to move. But then the building behind us suddenly exploded, causing John to jump behind me and protect me from the explosion. He was unaware that Niels already prepared to cover me by extending himself behind us. We both looked at each other in surprise and laughed. Soon the police approached us to help. They gave us water and took the two of us to the local police station for questioning. While there, I was provided with clothes. Beforehand, John told me not to tell them anything, just about the parts about the human and Engrisian experimentation. So that's what I did. After all the questioning that went on nearly all night, they got around to talking about contacting my parents, which only made me upset. That's when John showed up again, and he said that he'd ensure that I get home safely. I was concerned at first, but then I noticed him wink and smile at me. I was quickly calmed afterwards. As we exited the station, he stepped in front of me and kneeled down to look me in the eyes. Ingrid, I already know about the situation with your parents, and I have no intention of turning you over to them. At least, not unless you wanted me to, he asked. I immediately declined him, but was saddened by the fact that I now had nowhere to go. Or at least that's what I thought. Ingrid, why don't you come live with me in Astera City? I promise to take care of you and train you to be able to defend yourself. Additionally, I'll teach you a few tricks to living with a parasite like ours. He asked, smiling wholeheartedly towards me. Unknowingly, I began to cry in sheer joy. I hugged him tightly afterwards and thanked him countless times. I get that I just met him, but he literally saved my life, and we're both burdened with having parasites that make having a normal life pretty much impossible. I don't regret my actions. Back in present time, Ingrid could be seen having completely finished her pie. John is like a father to me. I love him so much for all the things he's done for me over these last 5 years. Pretty soon, he's going to begin my training as a detective, so that I can have skills just like him. I can't wait to tackle mysteries in the shade of night like him and you do. I said, standing and placing a fresh $220 bill on the table in front of me. What about the organization that experimented on us? Are you really going to forget about them? Neo's asked, vibrating. Slowly, I grabbed my coat and threw it on. Of course not. That woman and her boss are still alive somewhere, and I will personally take it upon myself to kill them both.